This isn't a running ad from REI, because it's mostly walking and occasionally flying. It's hitting your favorite trail with your favorite people who showed up for the same unhinged reason. And it's not just about fastest known times, but finding the funnest times. Because this isn't running, it's trail running. Get your gear for the trail in-store or at rei.com.
This episode is brought to you by Orgain. Orgain creatine monohydrate helps improve muscle size, strength, and power when combined with a regular exercise and weight training routine. It supports brain health, and it's certified with informed choice, so you can compete with confidence. Studies show that creatine may support brain health in vegetarians and aging individuals. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Hi everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today I'm going to talk about whether you overfunction with your family because you cannot tolerate people's negative emotions. And a lot of people do this. They think that they have a lot of, grit and frustration tolerance, and they may in other areas, but not with dealing with their spouse or their kids' negative emotions. And I've talked about this a lot in terms of people letting their kids treat them poorly. And this is kind of an extension of that, but also involves your spouse. And before I get to that, please do subscribe. I have loads and loads of awesome subscriber episodes. Most recently was Don't Stop Your Kids from Dating. And there's 230 others. All right. When people grow up kind of underprotected by their own parents, maybe it was abuse, maybe it was neglect, maybe it was emotional neglect, maybe it was just super permissive parents and you ended up getting into trouble on your own because you didn't have boundaries. You were allowed to stay out too late, you were using alcohol too young, who knows what you were doing. But basically you felt underprotected. Frequently then, whenever your child has a negative emotion, you feel like you are not protecting them in the way that you should. So you feel, because you are underprotected, you want to protect your children and potentially even your spouse if you feel a caretaking role toward them, which most people do, at least in some way, and that's normal with your spouse to want to care for them. But you may feel that if your kids or your spouse experiences a negative emotion on your watch, then you are letting them down. You may not relate it to your childhood at all, but I'm here to tell you that everything relates back to what you learned when you were young. And the quicker you realize that, the better your life will probably go. And the more things will start to make sense to you. And that's how therapy is very helpful. It helps you understand the origin of some of your anxieties, insecurities, or behaviors that you don't really understand. And so you can be in charge of your own behaviors if you understand their origin a lot better. But let me give you an example. So for example, your child wants to be on the iPad. You have a little child. And when you take away the iPad, they start to cry, right? So you can't tolerate the crying, and so you really end up letting them be on the iPad like all the time. And then you become ashamed and guilty because you look over and your kid has been on the iPad for like 2 hours at 5 years old, and you wish that you would have gone out, taken them to the playground or done something with them. And the reality is that you could have done that, but you would have had to deal with them crying, and you can't deal with them crying. And that is where your own inability to tolerate even a temporary emotion of struggle or irritation or anger or sadness, you are then not able to live according to your values as a parent because you really wanted to take them to the playground. You think that would have been fun, get some fresh air, socialize with other people, but you did not have the bandwidth to deal with them being upset. What's a way that this happens with a spouse? Your spouse will grumble if you ask them to sweep up. So even if you cook the whole meal, then you're going to also sweep up afterwards, because if you ask them, then they may give you a side eye, or they may sigh, or they may just not want to do it because like nobody wants to do shit like that, So them not wanting to do it and them maybe grumbling or sighing or something makes you so upset that they're having a negative emotion of frustration or fatigue or, just literally not wanting to do something. So then you don't even ask them. You end up doing everything and burning out because you're overfunctioning. So are you like, okay, then your kid's room. You tell your kid you got to clean your room. Your kid doesn't want to. They whine. They say they're tired. They say they want to do something else. And you feel that this frustration is intolerable. So you go and clean their room. Now, there are a lot of reasons that somebody could act upset, right? Some of them are because something terrible is happening, and some of them are just temporary frustration. But when you are very sensitive to this, everything feels like it's a massive problem. So you react to your child grumbling about cleaning the room or your spouse grumbling about doing a chore the same way as you would react to them being attacked or them being hurt. You feel that it is a horrible problem and you feel bad for causing them that. You feel that you are not protecting them from negative emotions. And so therefore you end up increasingly doing more and more and more. And by the way, while your child is on the iPad, what are you doing? Instead of going to the playground with them and engaging maybe with other adults or children or being outside, you're probably cleaning something, or you're probably catching up on work, or you're in some way doing something that you don't want to do to try to tell yourself somehow that it's okay that you stayed home while they're on the iPad, even though you don't really want to be there. And you know that if you could just tolerate their crying or their being upset for 2 seconds or for 5 minutes until they get into the car, that you would have been happier overall. But you don't want to think about that because then you think, why didn't I power through? And then that's so uncomfortable that you feel shame, and then the whole cycle starts again. So how do you deal with this? You have to basically do exposure therapy to yourself. You have to get used to people not being happy all the time, because there is no world, I'm sorry, that you cannot protect your child from every negative emotion. But even if you could, they would still leave your house eventually, and then they would have absolutely no ability to deal with it on their own because they would have had no practice. So some of your job as a parent is allowing your child to experience frustration, because if they don't ever experience frustration at home, how are they going to deal with it when they're out of the home? They will have no resources and no skills. Also, your marriage will go to shit if you can never let your spouse experience frustration, because increasingly you start taking over everything. You start overfunctioning at a rapid clip. They start underfunctioning even more because everybody gets used to it. It's like, why don't people take their clothes down to the river and wash it in the river anymore? Well, because we have washing machines. So ain't nobody going back from a time-saving, convenient device, right? And if you turn into a time-saving, convenient device for your spouse, that's just the new normal for them. If you take over all their chores, well then what are they going to come back and do it again after you do it? No, nobody would do that. So if you make yourself into an overfunctioner, they will underfunction more and more and more. I've seen this in both genders. I've seen it with men, I've seen it with women. This is the idea that finally, if you take everything off your partner's plate, they will be infinitely happy and you will never have the discomfort of witnessing them have a negative emotion. And you will never feel one bit of guilt that you could have done some more stuff that would somehow make them even more relaxed. And that's not your whole job in this world, is to protect them from irritation or frustration by enabling them to do nothing. And in fact, long term, your marriage will suffer because of this parent-child dynamic where both people feel very, very frustrated with one another, because over time, if you take off all the chores and everything they don't want to do from your partner's plate, you are going to want them to be happy all the time as an implicit contract. I do all the shit work so that you're always happy, or that you always love me. And they can't always be happy anyway. Right? So then if they complain about anything, then you feel like, well, why are you complaining? Because I pay all the bills, I do all the chores, I parent the kids. And it's not a fair thing, because no human being can ever experience a negative emotion. Sometimes men do this and then they expect that the woman will always want to have sex because they're doing all the chores. But she doesn't always want to have sex because she doesn't always want to have sex, period. Right? Or women think that if they do it all the time, then the man is going to be just so happy all the time because they hate negative emotions so much. So he'll never be upset about anything. He'll never be in a bad mood because they deal with everything around the house. But nobody's always in a good mood. So what instead you should interrogate is your need to control your partner or your kid's mood. And why are you so terrified of negative emotion? One possibility that I already covered is that you felt too much negative emotion as a child in a difficult, underprotected situation. The other is that you witnessed, and these could be combined also, is that you witnessed too much negative emotion in a caregiver or in your home growing up overall, and so you've become basically allergic to negative emotions. And that can't be. You know, that's something that you need to work on because negative emotions are normal and people experience positive emotions and negative emotions all over the course of a day. And there is nobody that can never be frustrated. And the more that you try to stop somebody from ever being frustrated, the more that you're going to take on to make yourself into a workhorse and a pack animal with this implicit contract that then they owe you always being happy. And nobody owes anybody always being happy. So, because that's not possible. So this is a really good, if this resonates with you, this is stuff that you could be working on in individual therapy. Where did I get this idea that it's my job to keep everybody happy at all times? And by the way, for women that feel like this, it often goes away in perimenopause. So that estrogen caretaking hormone drops and you look around and you're like, why doesn't anybody in this house do anything but me? And it's really because you trained them not to, because you were terrified of how anybody might feel frustrated. So this is with partners and with children. And so instead of letting it get to this boiling point, you could think ahead about what comes up for you when your partner or your kids express frustration that makes you unable to tolerate it. And you can work on incrementally building your frustration tolerance to their frustration or other negative emotions so that you can be more of a family member than some kind of cruise director, butler, maid, facilitator role where you're never actually enjoying anything because you're too focused on everybody else enjoying themselves. All right, I hope that you guys enjoyed this. It is really important. I do have a lot of other stuff on overfunctioning and underfunctioning and how this all originates. Some of it is linked. And again, if you ever need any therapy or coaching, reach out to my practice, bestlifebehavioralhealth.com. We have great people. And I'll talk to y'all soon. Have a great day, guys.